Guys, I was gifted these clamps from a friend. They're Woodpecker, they're Clampzillas, pricey clamps. I was pretty excited. He said he was frustrated with using them. That's why he gave them to me. I thought I would be able to figure it out, and I'm gonna find a way to love them, right? I attempted everything. I really wanted to like these. I attempted to slip the boards in. I attempted to put the clamps over and around the project. They're just too much to attempt to put these pins in and get everything lined up correctly. The glue sets up before you're able to do it. For these being my first woodpecker tool, I am so disappointed. I see all the fanboys out there with all their measuring devices and such. Unfortunately, I think these are a miss. So watch the video and you'll see why I came to that conclusion as well. At one point, I actually thought I liked them. And then 20 minutes later, with this right here, I'm reminded why I don't.
So I actually was just gifted a pair of Woodpecker Clampzillas. If you guys know anything about those, they're expensive. Never looked too much into how they work or anything like that, because the price is just outside of anything I'm going to be willing to spend. But they were gifted to me because the previous owner got pretty frustrated with them. Couldn't figure out how to make them work right for him, so he just went back to the normal clamp process. I don't know what kind of condition these come in when you purchase them, whether you have to put them together or if these hinges come pre-assembled. Maybe you got to put every single piece together. I'm not sure. If you did, it's not like that's a really tough thing. In the set that he's given me here, the smaller ones are 22 inches. My guess is that you can only get 20 inches out of those once you put a project inside that. Maybe they're actually 18. The other ones measured in at 40, so maybe those are 36-inch clamps. And then these big ones measured in at 52, and again, probably meant to be 48-inch clamps, because you do lose some of that spacing once you line up the hinges and you have a project in the middle of there. It's only going to have so much, so you're going to lose some space there. But on initial inspection of taking all of these apart and getting all of the hinges spun apart, the best word I can think of is they're clunky. The premise here of the Clampzilla is that when you put these together over top of your project, the panel, glue up, whatever you're doing, as you're gluing that together, the premise is that it's going to sit in here, and as you're twisting this tighter, these are actually being forced down in the same amount all the way across, because they're being pulled at basically to that hinge, which is putting the pressure in the middle. So again, causing what you would hope is really flat. I think the idea here is pretty solid. I'm sure it's going to work decently well, but again, the guess as to why my friend got frustrated with them, again, they're pretty clunky. So in order to even put these in place on a project, you have these safety pins, kind of like a trailer safety pin, that you have to pull out, and sometimes they stick really rough. So maybe some oil could be put on there to help those come out, but then you have to completely open it up like this. You'd have to put your project in here as it's gluing, and of course multiple clamps you're going to be doing this with, and then you have to line this piece up here with the top, and then reversing that on this side, and then getting it all reconnected before you even spin it down. So from a traditional clamp, everybody knows how to use those. They're really quick. You just, twist them, you slide them in place, twist them. They're going to go on really quick. They're going to go on really easy. But what you also run into there is the project typically wants to bow or shift. And again, this will potentially alleviate that with what the design is doing here, especially on maybe your bigger projects. As you can see, you got some basically 2-inch steel bars here, square steel, that will really help push a bigger project together, which I could see these being pretty useful and maybe worth the clunkiness. So if you're putting them together like this, like an actual panel, and you're worried about them doing this, I think it's definitely going to beat that. It's going to help. You don't have to do any furring strips or any top to bottom clamps to hold furring strips in place, and hoping those actually work. Numerous times I've had to actually plane a project down because the boards end up shifting, of course, you know, and so you got to find that middle. But for a project like this, it would certainly work as well, but unless it's a really big project, again, these might be too clunky and get pretty frustrating with doing that.
All right, guys, so I went ahead and cut all the boards down. This is going to be the panel. And rather than just doing like 3 or 5 larger pieces, I went ahead and cut them down into roughly 2.5-inch strips here. These are all roughly the same thickness. I'll be able to sand it down if I need to get it nice and smooth, any of the spots that aren't perfect. But for this test, these are going to line up well enough. Otherwise, I'm going to use those. I'm going to do 3 across this. And then I also have some more 2.5. These are all just random depth. And this, I will be doing a face-up glue. And this is the butted glue, all right? So we'll see about getting the panel out of this, and then we'll move on to the other one. So for this one, I'm going to use these the big dog ones, but I'm already seeing a lot of cumbersomeness with this as well. Somehow you have to get this project inside, glue them, and then put the project over top. So best as I can tell is you got to just take them apart and then set them up and press it together. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And again, you could go ahead and look up the how-to video. I'm sure Woodpecker has one to help line that out. But being more of a just figure it out myself kind of guy, here we are. And I'm just putting these in my pocket so I can keep track of them and they're not just falling to the floor. Tossing those in the middle of my project because I don't really have a lot of space I'm working with in the first place. Alright. And none of these boards are not cut all to the same length or anything like that either. I will end up cutting them down to a square once I figure out what I'm even going to do with it. But again, just making a test, but it will not go to waste. I always find a purpose for everything. So now that I have these on here, the only thing left to do is go ahead and glue them. And then we will put the top pieces on. And then clamp them down. Yeah, so again, not ideal. It'd be nice to be able to just glue and then clamp without having to put them all, reassemble them basically. But again, maybe that trade-off is that you're going to get a perfect panel. So we'll see. I got my mustard. My Tight Bond 3 is in here. Again, always using a mustard bottle. At some point, I will do a glue bottle review. I've got a couple picked out that I think will be good, as well as maybe get into a roller, but otherwise I just use my glue applicator that God provided me, being my finger. And these widths are not all perfect to each other. They are duplicates of the matching end, but not to every single board on here, so I just created a pattern. But it's not too important for what we're doing here. This one has a bit of a split, so we'll repair that while we're doing it as well. The other thing, when you are gluing the butt of the board together, you also want to make sure that you have a perfectly straight line on each end. I did my joining with just a level, as I don't have an actual joiner, so I did a level and my table saw here, which works pretty well. It's not as perfect as a joiner, but pretty darn close. And then clamping them together will help bring in a lot of that as well. And of course, if you could prevent getting all this glue, that would be ideal as well. But I'm just trying to do this pretty quick. Again, just a test, but I always sand it away and clean it up. You want a little bit of squeeze out on all glue ups anyways, as that's how you know you get a good face joint there or butt joint. And in a lot of cases, the glue joint is typically stronger than the board itself. So if you're gonna get a break, it's gonna break at the part of the wood instead of the glued spots. And I, again, am using Type Bond 3. It's a little bit of an overkill, but that's just what I use for basically everything. It's also the food safe one, not that I need that for this project, but rather than having multiple styles of glue, I just get the best and continue to use that for everything. All right, so this is, again, where I see a problem with these style clamps, is now you got to get it put together really quick. Or that joint is going to separate. After it dries. So again, not necessarily a fan of that. And then you want to make sure that these holes line up on the same spot. Otherwise, I think you'll have an issue with them compressing at the wrong spot from each side. And if you're using a different glue, maybe this wouldn't be such a stress point, but this glue does set up pretty quickly. And again, the friend who gave them to me didn't exactly tell me what the frustration was. He just said he couldn't get them to work well for him. And I have a feeling it was this cumbersomeness of having to figure out how to put them together around your project, which is not ideal. Oh, and then this ultimately seems like it needs to be at the edge. So another issue there. In order to be able to spin this, looks like you got to have this at an end. We'll go ahead and put it right at the last spot. And then we'll have to slide the whole project down and redo this side. Wow, guys, this is definitely not ideal at all. So another thing is, if maybe you had a furring strip in the middle of these, it would help take up some of that gap that you're attempting to figure out here. And now I don't even think we have enough push on this to make that. Nope. All right, so there's one side. And that actually, without a furring strip in there, this project's actually too thin for these to work correctly, it looks like. I don't see a way. There's no half measures on here. So that's not even gonna do that perfect panel. I don't know if you guys can see that here, but because of where these platforms sit and the amount of space you have to push here, maybe on a thicker project they would work a little better. But if you could see this, I don't even have enough space where I think I'm going to be able to reach this. Nope. So my project here is maybe a little too thin and a little too short. We'll grab one of these alternate sizes here and see if that makes any difference at all. All right, so let's try this one. Let's see. All right, so that actually made a bit of a difference there. Got some glue coming out. And seems like everything might be sitting correctly. So it looks like you cannot use these bigger ones on a thin project. So good to know. I was attempting to do both glue ups at the same time right now. Looks like I will not be doing that. I will come back and do the other glue up possibly at a different time. So at this point, I'm also kind of concerned, did I wait too long on this? And did the glue set up? We'll see. We'll see how this shakes out at the end, but it is just a test, but I prefer to use everything I can and not let it go to waste. All right, so yeah, as you crank these together, you can see the board here come together as well. So the premise of them does look like it would work, though even though the big ones didn't work, it is still super clunky. Like, it's just not exactly easy. Maybe with a little bit of use, you get used to it. So I'm not necessarily giving up on them. I'm gonna have to move this one down now. I mean, yeah, it does totally pull those boards together. All right, let's take a look. All right, so if you can see that, it did actually pull them all together. It's not, I mean, maybe with a little practice this will get better, but definitely clunky when you're first starting out. And I didn't even line up my boards as good as I could have, but I started getting concerned about the glue setting up correctly. So it's going to be what it is right now. We'll just see how that comes out. This definitely takes some getting used to. The way they're supposed to fold kind of plays tricks on you as you're doing it. But man, I don't know if I could see spending the price. As of right now, I can't imagine finding these worth it, depending on what the project is. And again, that bigger, those 48 inches, if it's a really thick project, maybe they would be really good. So until I test that, I won't know for sure. I don't have any big projects on deck right now. Man, these are not easy. Let's try it a different way here. Give myself room to work on that side. There we go. And like I said, the safety pins get kind of stuck. They're not easy to necessarily get in and out. Maybe those will loosen up over time, I'm not sure. So it has dried overnight through the next day, and here's what we're left with. Since I was worried about the glue setting up yesterday with trying to get these clamps set, I do have some shift out that I would have rather had at least one close to flush side there, so I don't have to cut off too much material for whatever I end up using this for. Most likely I'll cut it down, glue it up as something else, replane it, maybe get some funky colors out of it, but not sure exactly what I'll do with it, but it won't go to waste. I've already unclamped those sides there, so we can just slide this out. All right, and there is what we are left with as far as flat goes. So it looks like it did a pretty good job of gluing up a flat panel here. Let's go ahead and see what it does for level. Actually, yeah, that looks pretty square. The floor in my garage isn't necessarily level, but end to end, it follows level. So as far as being flat, it did achieve that. Now I have these other face style glue up that we're gonna get to here. As far as the panel goes, I did watch another video in between, kind of seeing how they intended it to be done. And what it looks like is you have them fully set up like this, and then you slide in, you glue up, and then slide in each board like so. I don't think I like that. I saw another video also where the guy, like I thought, took off one side and folded it over, set everything down on top and folded them over, which I attempted to do. Definitely cumbersome. He was tripping over the pieces that was hanging back. He was using the really big ones, the 50-inch. As far as clamps go, they're not probably the easiest, but from what we got here, definitely got a flat surface. So without having to do any other cross bracing and other clamps going up and down and holding that, as far as I'm predicting right now, I think the way these will live in my clamp arsenal is gonna be in unison with other clamps. That's just the way I see it working. If I'm doing a clamp like this, potentially going to use my parallel clamps or something to get the project held together on that initial gluing, put these Clampzillas around it, and then start pressing them together, loosening those parallel clamps to do so. But that way I don't get all this weird funkiness with the project sliding around. But I think it's just going to take some more working with the clamps to really understand how they're going to work. I do think the thicker the project, this being as thin as it was, is probably as small that you could go with this clamp. I did get it to press on both sides of that clamp, but you're limited to the thickness of this little brace right here on each side, and I think this was right there. So on a thicker project, I think it's going to work a little better. Still probably going to be clunky putting that together. So with that, we'll move on to putting together this face glue up and go through final thoughts. So another call out is you really have to have everything basically set up the same. You got to have these drawn back all the way. And I guess you probably need to do that with a normal clamp as well. But you can kind of adjust that as you're going on a normal clamp. Something like this could cause you to get this set wrong on this end if you're too far up there. So again, causing some issues with getting the glue there. But otherwise, we're gonna go with this same process here. I'm not gonna do the slide in method. I don't like that. I think it's gonna cause a lot of glue drip. Potentially there's a way to set these up, rig them up with something where they could be standing vertically, almost like a glue rack, if you've seen some of those, where you set everything up there at a horizontal line and everything kind of stacks and then you crank it down. Maybe you could set these up in some sort of position like that, and then sliding things in there wouldn't be so bad. But the way they're setting right now, sliding things in like that is just, I feel like you're gonna cause a lot of glue drip out there. So, all right, so I'm gonna start gluing these up. They're all irregular. They've got different thickness, different length, because I didn't do anything to true them up like that. Basically, I will glue these up, and I do this with others as well, but I'll glue them up, and then I will trim legs out of them, basically, for a bench or a table or something like that. So for the faces, I do think this is gonna work a little better than it did for the panel. You got to have these all lined up to that end. Again, setup on these is pretty cumbersome, not necessarily quick. Maybe once you get a little bit of the hang of it, it'll get quicker. All right, and if you can see that I'm purposely twisting it here, thinking that'll put pressure top to bottom. So we'll see. Begin. So I'm gonna do the two ends first. First side went on a little quicker. See, and again, you got to have these set up perfectly the same. I did not. So counting the holes is probably an easier way to line them up. Matching where you're setting each one. So with each one of these, I have 3 holes in the middle of each. With other style clamps, there's some school of thought to alternate them. So maybe that's something you could do with these too. But for the purposes of this video, and honestly, for setting them up on your workbench, I don't know how you would do that because you need this to hang off in order to get to the handles and get everything lined up. So, but because of the bars that pull everything together, I don't know that that's needed anyway. Okay, so there's that glue up with the face. Again, it's a smaller project, but should get a pretty good read on how it does. Already I could see that I still got some shift out over here, and I believe that's because it takes so long to set these clamps up. I already had some glue set up here. I attempted to break it with a different clamp, undoing a couple. It just shifted a little bit over here, which I'll have to get these planed down to the same size when I cut them into legs. But overall, it does look pretty good. If you've ever done glue ups with normal clamps, you get a lot of shift out that you have to attempt to control some way. This does seem to be controlling it for the most part. Again, if I am working with these more regularly, they'll be quicker, hopefully, is the idea, once I get used to how to put them together. Right now, they're very cumbersome. They take quite a bit of effort and thinking and readjusting, and but I do see that they probably have a place, again, in unison with maybe parallel or other style clamps. But the fact that these do hold it basically flush together, I do like that. So I think going forward, I could utilize these as well as my normal clamps as I'm setting stuff up. So we'll see how this dries. We'll take them apart and look at it. I had a ton of glue squeeze out on the boards that I put together here. So we're gonna get a good read on how well the glue comes off of these as well. That could be a frustrating thing. These are kind of like a powder coated steel. So my guess is it's probably gonna stick to it, unfortunately, pretty well. We'll see. But an option to that would be putting like some Minwax or something like that on there to help prevent that, which I'll probably do before using them in the future. So this is dried for a couple days now, actually, because I had some events in between. I had about a day in between, so well over 24 hours. I think we're roughly 36-ish hours, but so perfectly dry. I'm gonna go ahead and get them unbound, pull everything out. We'll take a look at it. Just first glance at this, kind of said it in the last touch there when I clamped them down, but for a face glue up like this, these are really well pressed together as far as shift out, the boards sliding one way or another, top to bottom like this. I did get a little right here that I had called out. Some of that, the boards are all the same diameter, so like the edge lines up. I'm wondering if I might have had a little bit of a hoop in one of them or so. We'll see if we've got a mirror of this dip on the other side, and that'll tell us if there was a shift out or if maybe my cut was slightly off. But otherwise, this side looks perfect, looks all the way good until roughly about here. And again, that could be a little bit of a hoop there. But I'm actually pretty happy with the clamping of that shift out. So I do think I'm gonna find a way to incorporate these into my normal glue up process. I don't know that I like them standalone. I think I'm gonna end up using normal clamps to pull them together. All right, so we're just gonna slide them right off the end either way instead of taking the clamps apart. Just looking at this one, got some glue there. And actually, it looks like maybe the glue, yeah, the glue appears to peel off pretty easily, actually. I think you could make this even easier with getting some wax on there, but looks like it actually will come off pretty easy. So as far as glue sticking to these, it's not as bad as I first had thought. And you definitely wouldn't want to go and scrape it off because you're not going to want to cause anything to pull off this powder coating. But it doesn't seem like the glue is going to stick as much as I originally had thought, which is good. Upon investigating this side, as you can see, I had a ton of squeeze out here, lots of glue, some tracks of glue where the bars were resting. And on this side, I actually have a perfect lineup. They actually held really tight. So what that tells me is I must have had a little bit of a shorter cut on a couple of these, and it was not actual shift out. So I'm actually pretty impressed with that piece. These definitely check that box of preventing shift out for glue up. Now I'm actually pretty excited to work these into my future projects because that's usually a pain in the butt to figure out, especially when you're doing some irregular glue ups. I've done some diagonal projects and such that there's no real good way to clamp across. You know, you never really have enough clamps. I'm sure you guys have ran into that. So now I think I'm gonna be able to find a way to incorporate these into my glue up process. I do plan to use my normal style clamps, maybe a parallel clamp for some of the initial setup and kind of holding that stuff together while you get these in place, because again, cumbersome is the word that comes to mind with working with these. They are not ideal with while you're trying to get that glue, not to set up, to get the clamps on there fast. They're just not really ideal for that. Maybe that's something that I'm gonna hone myself as I get used to working with them, and I do believe that's gonna be the case. So I don't wanna necessarily give them a bad rap, but for the cost, it's kind of a lot. If you're just getting into woodworking, I would just go with a normal set of clamps. Certainly your F-style, your clamps are super easy, pretty affordable as far as clamps go. And they do really everything that you need. To just take a little bit of figuring out how to hit that right pressure point. And then parallel clamps certainly are really good for glue ups. I do think these are gonna really fill in that gap that parallel clamps can't, where you get some of that bowing out, especially when you're doing a panel. This panel style like this, you can get your parallel clamps to do this, but if you put too much pressure on it, you're gonna get flex in the middle there. I'm sure you guys have seen it. So I do think these are gonna help find some middle ground there. Again, I think they live in an area where you're going to be using both style of clamps. Something that you can get quick ratcheting so that you can keep your project kind of held where it's supposed to be without allowing that glue to set up. Especially if that glue were to set up a little bit and then you try to bring those joints together, you're going to have spaces, which I don't think that happened for the most part. If anything, I had some boards that had some damage on them, because I do see a couple gaps, but most likely that was from some of the boards. It's pallet wood that I'm working with here, so some of them weren't perfect. So most likely that's where my gaps came from. But if some of that glue were to set up, it'll prevent those faces from really coming together. And so time is everything. You don't want that glue to set too fast. So if you use a normal style clamp, got everything kind of positioned together as you're working, held it in place, and then got those around it to prevent the shift out. You still got to work quick, of course, because you need to line up that shift out. But I do think that's going to work really well for me. So I know they were frustrating for my friend. I talked to him in between the segment and told him that I think I figured out what was frustrating to you. And I told him that they were cumbersome. And he said, exactly. He said, I'm glad I'm not the only one that had the problem. But I do think I am going to find the way that they are going to work for me. These are not the first tools that he's gifted me with. He's blessed me with a set of DeWalt power tools out of nowhere. And he's gifted me with some lumber, some nice live edge that I finished my basement with. He also allowed me to use his shop, all of his tools to do all of that. So basically I was able to work that wood there, get it cut into basically what I needed, brought it here to my house, and then I was able to assemble it on site with the tools that I had at that point, and then I epoxied it and stuff like that. But that live edge, that lumber just came from him. So again, what a gift. But he's always been a big blessing to me, and these are just another piece of that. So they didn't work out for him, but I do think they're going to work out for me. So who are these for? I think they're going to be for somebody who's already got all the other clamps that they need already in that don't necessarily need another tool. These clamps are not the clamp to go out and buy first. So typically I attempt to think about what's the tool that's going to get the job done for me from the start. I want to spend the money once, hurt once, you know, that old adage, and buy the best tool for the job that's going to last. I do not think that this would be the tool to start with. Again, a normal style clamp, set of clamps, because you need a lot of clamps. These aren't going to do it. You need a bunch. So I would still start with your normal F clamp, parallel clamp, those style, your squeeze clamps. But if you're already in those and you're doing a lot of panel glue ups or face glue ups like this, then they do have a place for you. There are other companies that have some out there as well. I saw a pair of Rocklers that look like they come together pretty good, where they kind of snap over some teeth. It does seem that they still have about the same spacing even with those teeth, but maybe they're a little less cumbersome. Another option I've seen out there is taking some of that electrical conduit channel strut. If you've seen it, it kind of looks like a square steel. One side's open. You can use it for hanging stuff. You can put like wheel track and stuff in there. But basically, it's just a really solid steel track, and then it's got holes in it. So you can take two of them and use some hardware and create your own pressing. You could get some sort of butterfly bolt or something like that, something that you can screw together. But you could totally DIY that yourself, and you're going to save a ton versus buying a set of these. And you'd get exactly the same effect. You could also put additional mounting in there to help do that, but all that would do then is press it together. You're not getting any pressing this way. So if you're still incorporating your F-style clamps or your parallel clamps, you're going to get those to go against the project this way, of course, but then you could use that channel, steel channel, you could use that to go across the top. And again, that would just pull those tight down. And it's pretty heavy gauge stuff. They've got several different dimensions you could choose from, but if you get a really sturdy one, it's going to put that same pressure through the middle, especially on your smaller projects. As you get into bigger stuff, something like this, the way that it's engineered, it's pulling it down, so it does have a little bit of physics over that. But again, for the person that might be looking at these, I think you're already pretty far into your craft and into your tool selection, and then you're looking at a set of these. So I just filmed the part saying, you know what, I think I actually like these. And then I went to use them on my next project, on the very next glue up, and I've completely changed my mind. They can only work for panel glue ups. As far as I can tell, panel glue ups is all that's going to work when you don't have too much gluing to do. If you only got, maybe 3 to 5 seams that you've got to glue up and put together. As you can see, what I'm doing here, I've got 25 pickets here that I've got to glue in between, and you just cannot glue and set up fast enough before the glue sets up. Unfortunately, right down here where I started in, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a break there, and I tried to repair over here. Most likely I'm going to have a break on one side. I'm going to have to fix that. So for any type of excess amount of gluing you need to do, these just aren't meant for it. These really are just for panels, so butt to butt, edge to edge, not for any type of face to face like what I'm doing here. And I do a lot of this style glue ups, so for me these definitely don't make sense. For panel style, again, butt to butt, maybe they could be beneficial. They do certainly hold it tight once you get it there. You can ignore these two things here. This one's for balance, but this one I put right here because I glued up a piece that had a split in it, and I was just using it to hold it together, which it'll disappear inside the project here. But so these aren't necessarily the issue, but I did attempt to use these leading into the glue up. I attempted to hold it together. On the next try, I'm going to use my large parallel clamps to keep everything together, and then once I have it all together, I'm going to slip these over it and see if maybe there's a benefit to them and holding it all together. These boards are irregular, so if you see any gaps and ups and downs here, I knew it wasn't going to be perfect. I was going to plane it to even. For this being a Woodpecker product, I'm kind of disappointed with how clunky it is. For how much money it is, for who Woodpecker is, the kind of tools they put out and the costs that they demand for them, I'm pretty disappointed. Luckily, they were free to me. I'm very aware of why my friend is frustrated with them now. I cannot see wanting to use these on a regular basis. I attempted to do the slip-in method where I had every single one of them set up. I measured the distance I needed and then overspaced it a little bit to allow for it to fit, and I ended up wrong. So that's something you can figure out as you're working with them more, what space you do need to account for. Being wrong made it where I had to readjust every single one of these clamps again. Not ideal. Like for the type of woodworking I'm doing, for this glue setting up this quickly, it's just not the right tool for the job. Again, if you're doing a lot of panel glue ups, maybe they're right for you. For me, I have found my frustration and my breaking point. We'll see how they work out for me tomorrow when I do the next panel and I use my parallel clamps. But right now I'm saying I cannot see a benefit unless you're doing a lot of panels. And again, for the cost, I think you can find a different solution in order to do them. I do appreciate my friend gifting them to me because, you know what, it was still interesting to give them a try. I do think I'll find a way to incorporate them into these style of glue ups, but it's just not going to be the lead clamp. It just can't be. They are too clunky. Yeah, disappointed. Sorry, Woodpecker, not sorry. All right, so if you guys have any experience working with these, please leave any tips and tricks in the comments below. Anything I should be doing different, anything I should know, anything that you figured out, because I am going to find a way to work these into my repertoire because I do like how this glue up came out right here. And I do a lot of these for the style of wood projects that I'm doing. So I am totally going to be using them. But if you guys have anything that you think would be beneficial, or any experiences you've had, any frustrations, I'd like to hear those as well, because those are always fun. We all have them. But otherwise, anything you guys want to see from me in the future, put that in there as well. But please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on another video. Thanks.